The thing about Vrexians, Operative Kez had decided somewhere around hour 3, was that they confused thoroughness with intelligence. They'd been at this for what felt like a geological epoch. 4 of them, arranged in a perfect semicircle across the brushed titanium table, their chitinous faces reflecting the sterile white light, like very disappointed beetles. Behind them, the observation wall, one-way plasteel, naturally, probably held another dozen analysts frantically cross-referencing everything she said against their databases. She'd counted 17 different ways they'd asked the same question. "Explain again," said the one on the left. "Designate Tribunal Member 3, because apparently Vrexians believed in functional nomenclature over personality. How you identified Operative Jess." Kez stretched, joints popping in the recycled air. "I already told you he smelled different." "Smelled?" "Yep." "You identified a deep-cover intelligence operative, embedded in civilian population of Station Tarsus 9, population 400,000, by scent." "Well, when you say it like that, you make it sound unreasonable." Tribunal Member 1, the big one, with the decorative scarring that suggested either rank or really poor life choices, leaned forward. "Humans have inferior olfactory capability compared to 47 known sentient species. This is documented." "Sure," Kez agreed amiably, but Jess was wearing Vrexian pheromone suppressors, which, fun fact, smell like burnt plastic and anxiety to a human nose. Nobody else in that crowd was trying that hard to smell like nothing. Silence. The kind that suggested several beings simultaneously updating their threat assessment files. Tribunal Member 2, the one with what might have been academic honors etched into their carapace, made a clicking sound. The operational file lists 143 confirmed eliminations across 3 systems in 7 standard months. Eliminations sound so final. I prefer forcible retirements. "You dismantled our entire intelligence apparatus in the outer reach." "I mean, entire is doing some heavy lifting there. I got, 60%? 70 tops. You guys definitely have more spies somewhere. You seem like the type." Tribunal Member 4, who hadn't spoken yet, finally did. Their voice was softer than the others, which somehow made it worse. "The file designates you as Earthborn." "There it is," Kez said, grinning. "Is the designation incorrect?" "Nope. Just funny hearing you say it like you're ordering food. Earthborn. You put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Makes it sound like a disease." "Perhaps," said Tribunal Member 1. "It is?" "Oh, that's rich. Poetic even. You write that yourself? Or is there a Vrexian insult database you all pull from?" The big one's mandibles twitched. Annoyance, if Kez's crash course in Vrexian micro-expressions was accurate. "We have reviewed your species application to the cooperative. 3rd stage development. Singular homeworld. No faster-than-light capability until contact. Limited genetic adaptation to environment. You are, by any objective measure, unremarkable." "And yet," Kez said, tapping the table with one finger, "here we are." Me, completely relaxed. You 4 trying real hard to figure out how one unremarkable human turned your operation into a blooper reel. "We are attempting," said the academic one, "to understand the discrepancy between your species' statistical limitations and your operational success." "Ah, you want to know the secret. There must be augmentation, genetic modification, chemical enhancement." Kez laughed. Actually laughed, head thrown back, the sound bouncing off the walls of the interrogation room like it was mocking the architecture itself. "Oh, you sweet summer beetles. You really don't get it, do you?" "Explain." "No, see, that's the problem. You keep asking me to explain, like there's some kind of trick, some piece of tech you missed in your scans, some drug in my system, some cheat code." She leaned forward, still smiling. "There isn't one." "Impossible. The statistical probability." "Your statistics," Kez interrupted, "don't account for what we are. what we actually evolved to be. Tribunal Member 4 tilted their head. You evolved as persistence hunters. This is noted in the xenobiology reports. Cardiovascular efficiency, heat dissipation, bipedal locomotion optimized for distance. Impressive for a Deathworld species, but hardly unique in practical application. Sure, we can jog things to death. Very scary. But you know what we got that the others didn't? She paused, making sure she had all 4 sets of compound eyes on her. We got bored. Bored. See, somewhere between learning to run down prey for days and inventing agriculture, we had this awkward period where we were the apex predator but still had way too much thinking time. So we started telling stories, made up gods, invented enemies, created entire conceptual frameworks for violence we hadn't even committed yet. This is cultural development. All species have mythology. Yeah, but we weaponized it. We turned spite into philosophy, revenge into art. We're the only species in the known galaxy that invented the concept of a grudge and then held on to them for generations. Plural. We have epic poems about people being mad at each other. Tribunal Member 1's mandibles clicked in what might have been dismissal. Emotional volatility is a weakness, not a strength. Is it, though? Because I've been mad at you guys for 7 months, and in that time I learned your language, your culture, your operational doctrine, your security protocols, and the personal habits of every single one of your field operatives. I learned which of them had families, which ones had debts, which ones were sleeping with each other, which ones hated each other, which ones were just going through the motions. She counted off on her fingers. And then I befriended them, or blackmailed them, or seduced them, or intimidated them, whatever worked. Because humans don't just hunt, Tribunal. We study, we adapt, we obsess. The room had gone very quiet. You wanted to know how I identified Zess? Kez continued. I spent 3 weeks studying the walking patterns of everyone in that station. The way people move when they're pretending to belong somewhere versus when they actually do. Jess walked like someone consciously trying to look casual. Nobody really casual works that hard at it. 3 weeks, the academic one repeated. For one operative. Oh, that was just Jess. I was studying all of you simultaneously. Efficiency, you know? Humans are great at multitasking when we're being petty. Tribunal Member 4 made a sound like escaping air. This entire operation, 7 months, 143 operatives. You did this because you were petty? Well, you did blow up that transport ship with my friend on it. Sure, it was marked as a military target, and sure, she probably shouldn't have been smuggling medical supplies through a conflict zone, but still, bit rude, wasn't it? One individual. You destabilized 3 systems over one individual. See, this is why you don't understand humans. It's never about the scale. It's about the principle. You killed my friend. I killed your entire operational framework. Seems fair. Tribunal Member 1 stood. The movement was sharp, aggressive. You speak as though you have won. You are contained, isolated. You have no support, no extraction, no leverage. Kez's smile widened. Don't I? You are alone. Am I, though? The lights flickered. Just for a second. Just long enough. Tribunal Member 2 checked their wrist display. Frowned, or whatever the Vrexian equivalent was. Comm static. Localized. Huh, said Kez. Weird. The door behind the tribunal opened. Everyone turned. The general walked in, and Kez had to admit, they did know how to make an entrance. Leave us, the general said. Their voice was different from the tribunal's. Deeper, rougher, the kind of voice that had ordered deaths and slept fine afterward. The tribunal hesitated. Now. They filed out, mandibles clicking softly to each other. Worried sounds, smart beetles, Kez thought. At least some of them were paying attention. The general sat down in the center seat, directly across from Kez. They placed both upper appendages on the table. A power move. Look at me, taking up space. Look at me, unafraid. Earthborn, the general said. And this time it wasn't a designation. It was an accusation. That's me, Kez said cheerfully. But you know what? I think you can say it louder. The general's eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you've started. Kez leaned back in her chair, completely at ease. Oh, General, that's where you're wrong. She smiled. I know exactly what I've started. The general slid a data tablet across the table. The screen showed surveillance, footage, timestamp 3 months prior. Station Helix 7, the general said. Maintenance sector. Watch Kez glanced at the screen. A figure, her, obviously, walking through a corridor. Normal pace, normal gait. She passed a Vrexian security officer, nodded, kept walking. 30 seconds later, the general continued, tapping the screen. The security officer collapsed. Neurotoxin, delivered via handshake. He survived, but his memory never recovered. We didn't even know he'd been compromised until 2 weeks afterward. Memory's a tricky thing, Kez said. Sometimes the brain just protects itself from trauma. The general pulled up another file. Station Meridian 14. You spent 6 weeks working as a translator in the commercial district. Good job, that. Met interesting people. You identified 12 embedded assets, made friends with all of them, then systematically fed them false intelligence that led to the exposure of 17 more operatives across 4 systems. The general's carapace darkened. Anger, Kez had learned. You turned our own network against itself. In my defense, your people are very trusting once you learn their drinking songs. This isn't a joke. No, Kez agreed, and her voice lost its playful edge. It really isn't. You want to know what's funny, though? Every species we've met has the same reaction when they learn about humans. How did they survive their own planet? Like we're some kind of cosmic accident. The general said nothing. You know what killed the megafauna on Earth? Not climate change, not asteroids. US. We walked them to death. Literal extinction by persistence. But that was just practice. Kez gestured at the tablet. This is what we evolved for, not the killing, the waiting. Persistence hunting requires prey that tires. Everything tires, General, everything. You know what the longest war in human history was? Lasted 335 years. The Netherlands versus the Isles of Scilly. Want to know the casualty count? The general's mandibles twitched. Curiosity, maybe, or concern. 0, not a single death. But they stayed mad at each other for 3 centuries anyway. Officially, formally, with documentation. Kez laughed quietly. We're the species that invented bureaucratic spite. Your point? My point is that you studied the wrong things about us. You looked at our biology and saw limitations. You should have looked at our history and seen warning signs. The general pulled up another file. This one made Kez pause. It was a timeline. A beautiful, horrifying timeline that connected every single one of her operations across 7 months. Red lines linking targets, dates, locations. Someone had spent serious hours on this analysis. We mapped your pattern, the general said. Every target, every approach. You never repeated a methodology, never used the same strategy twice. Variety is the spice of life. No, this is deliberate. You were teaching yourself. Each operation was a test case. You were experimenting on us. Kez didn't confirm or deny, just watched. The question, the general continued, is why? If your objective was revenge for one individual, why the elaborate preparation? Why not simply strike and extract? You really want to know? I want to understand what I'm dealing with. Kez considered this. Okay, you know the story of the Trojan horse? Ancient human military deception. We have files. Sure. Big wooden horse, soldiers inside, very clever. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that it took 10 years. 10 years of siege warfare before they came up with that plan. 10 years of humans sitting outside a city, trying everything, failing at everything, until finally, someone said, "What if we just pretend to leave?" Desperation strategy. Innovation strategy. See, most species would have given up, cut losses, moved on. But humans? We get more creative the longer we're stuck. Constraints don't limit us. They inspire us. The general pulled up yet another file. Kez was starting to wonder how many they had. This one showed a bar. Low-light recording, grainy. Kez sat at a corner table with a Vrexian operative. Sentinel, if she remembered correctly. They were laughing. Actually laughing together. "You bought him drinks," the general said. "Told jokes. He reported you as a potential intelligence source. Friendly, cooperative, eager to share information about human commercial routes." Sentinel was nice, little too trusting, but nice. He gave you access to encrypted channels, introduced you to his handler. You spent 3 weeks building that relationship. Good times. Then you disappeared. 2 days later, Sentinel's entire cell was compromised. His handler was arrested by local authorities for unrelated smuggling charges. Charges that mysteriously appeared in official databases with full evidence chains. Sentinel himself woke up in a medical facility with no memory of the previous week. Wild. The general leaned forward. You could have simply eliminated him. Quick, efficient. But you didn't. You made sure he survived. Made sure he lived with the knowledge that someone he trusted had destroyed everything he'd built. Why? Because killing someone is easy, General. Making them understand why they're being killed, that takes effort. Psychological warfare. Education, Kez corrected. Every operative I encountered got a lesson. Some learned that trust is dangerous. Some learned that competence doesn't equal safety. Some learned that even their most secure protocols had gaps. She paused. But they all learned something. The general's carapace was nearly black now. You're describing terrorism. I'm describing consequences. You blow up a transport ship, you face consequences. You hire humans to fight humans, you face consequences. You assume Earth is just another client state in your expansion plans, you face... We never hired humans. Kez stopped, smiled. No? Our operations in human space were intelligence gathering only. We have strict protocols against hiring native populations for combat operations. It creates complications. Protocols, Kez repeated. Right. Those things that definitely never get broken by field commanders with initiative. The general's silence was confirmation enough. See, that's the thing about humans, Kez continued. We talk to each other. Even the ones who hate each other, we still talk. Share information, compare notes. And when word got around that someone was paying humans to hunt down other humans, specifically humans involved in certain unauthorized commercial operations, well, that created a different kind of complication. What kind? The kind where Earth's criminal networks, pirate clans, smuggling cartels, and black market arms dealers all agreed on something for the first time in recorded history. The general's eyes widened slightly. That's impossible. Human criminal organizations are famously fractious. They spend more resources fighting each other than any external threat. Yeah, usually. But see, there's this thing humans have. We call it principle. And the principle here is pretty simple. Only we get to hunt us. The lights flickered again. Longer this time. The general's wrist display chirped. They checked it, mandibles clicking rapidly. Engineering reports power fluctuations in sectors 7 through 12. That does sound concerning. Localized system failures, no clear cause, diagnostics showing green across all primary functions, but The general looked up sharply. You did something. Me? I've been sitting in this chair for hours. Your own security footage proves it. Your people, then. You have assets aboard this vessel. Now, why would you think that? The general stood abruptly. This ship has been in deep space for 3 months. Every crew member has been vetted. Every supply run has been screened. The door opened again. A junior officer stepped in, carapace pale with stress. General, we have a situation. Report. Maintenance crew in Sector 9. They're human. The general went very still. That's impossible. We have no human contractors aboard. They have full credentials, ID badges, work orders. They've been here for... The officer checked their tablet. 2 months, standard rotation. Everything checks out in the system. Everything checks out, Kez said helpfully, because I made sure it would. Humans are really good at paperwork when we're motivated. The general turned slowly. How many what? How many humans are on my ship? Kez pretended to think about it. Define ship. Do you mean this specific vessel, or your entire fleet? Because the numbers get really interesting when you expand the scope. The general's carapace had gone from black to a kind of mottled gray. Fear, Kez thought. Finally. You've been planning this, the general said quietly. From the beginning, the operations, the captures, the psychological warfare, all of it was designed to bring you here, to this ship. Give the general a medal. See, you can be taught. But why? What's the objective? If you wanted me dead, you could have. Who said I want you dead? Kez stood up for the first time since the interrogation began, stretched, rolled her shoulders. Dead would be easy. Dead would be boring. Dead doesn't send a message. What message? Kez walked to the observation window, looked out at the stars beyond the plasteel. You know what humans put on the Voyager probe? The thing we sent out into space before we even knew anyone was listening? Music, article, mathematical formulas, languages, a map to our home planet. She turned back to the general. We literally drew a target on ourselves and threw it into the void because we were curious about what might find it. Recklessness, optimism, or stupidity. The line gets blurry. She leaned against the window. But here's the thing, General. We also included instructions, not just about who we are, but about what we value. And number 1 on that list? The golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Philosophy won't save you. No, Kez agreed. But it'll make what happens next really ironic. The lights went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in. Dim red glow that made everyone look like shadows. The general's wrist display lit up with alert after alert. All systems. Someone's accessing all systems simultaneously. Not someone, Kez said. Someone's, plural. Lots and lots of plural. How many are there? Kez smiled in the darkness. Enough. See, you wanted to understand humans. You wanted to know how one person could do what I did. But you're still asking the wrong question. What's the right question? The right question, Kez said, is what happens when humans stop being individuals and start being a collective. When we stop competing with each other and start cooperating toward a common goal. When we decide that someone, anyone, has messed with one of us enough that we all take it personally. The door opened. More humans walked in, wearing maintenance uniforms, security badges, medical scrubs, all completely legitimate, all completely false. The general reached for their weapon. I wouldn't, said one of the humans, a tall one with scars across her knuckles and a smile that could cut glass. Not unless you want to find out how many of us are currently pointing things at you. The general's hand froze. Kez walked over to stand beside her fellow humans. So here's how this works, General. You're going to do something for us, something simple, something that won't hurt at all. What? You're going to say it. My designation. Earthborn. But this time? Kez's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. You're going to say it louder. The General's compound eyes shifted between the dozen humans now occupying the interrogation room. Each wore different uniforms, different roles, different faces, but the same expression. Patient, amused, dangerous. You're bluffing, the General said, though the conviction had leaked out of their voice somewhere between the third and fourth power fluctuation. The scarred human, Kez had worked with her before, a demolitions expert who'd gotten kicked out of 3 separate military organizations for creative interpretation of rules, pulled out a tablet. Deck 12, Section 4. Your personal quarters. Nice collection of Thracian poetry, by the way. Didn't peg you for the artistic type. Another human, this one wearing a medical officer's insignia that probably cost someone their identity, added, Cargo Bay 7. Those aren't agricultural supplies. That's military-grade plasma accelerant, 1,600 tons of it, which, fun fact, isn't technically illegal, but would definitely raise questions during your next inspection. Communications Array Beta, said a third, casual as discussing weather. We've been routing your encrypted transmissions through our own filters for 6 weeks. Every message, every order, every personal correspondence. The General's carapace had achieved a shade Kez didn't have a name for, probably something between existential dread and professional humiliation. How? The General managed. We have quantum encrypted verification on every access point, neural pattern locks on sensitive areas, DNA scanners on— Yeah, about those DNA scanners, Kez interrupted. Funny story. You know what's great about human biology? We're absurdly easy to clone. Not full humans, obviously, ethics and all that, but tissue samples, skin cells, blood. We've been growing custom authentication samples for 2 months. Your security system thinks we're 30 different species, including 6 Vrexians who definitely don't exist. The medical officer grinned. Biofabrication, Earth's 3rd largest export industry after weapons and entertainment. Who knew it'd come in handy? The General sat down slowly, like someone had cut their strings. This is elaborate for a revenge operation. Revenge? Kez laughed. General, you're still not getting it. This isn't revenge. Revenge is what I did to your intelligence network. This? She gestured at the room, the ship, the situation. This is business. I don't understand. Of course you don't. You think in hierarchies, command structures, official channels. But humans? We think in networks, mutual benefit, quid pro quo. You hurt one of us, sure. That made me angry. But anger doesn't organize 12 different criminal syndicates. Anger doesn't convince rival pirate lords to cooperate. Anger doesn't get black market weapons dealers to share shipping routes with smugglers they've been trying to kill for years. Then what does? Profit, said the scarred human. And professional pride. Kez nodded. See, when you started hiring humans to hunt down other humans, you created a market inefficiency. Competition where there shouldn't be any. You made us work against each other when we could be working against everyone else. That's just bad economics. The General's mandibles clicked rapidly. Processing. Calculating. You're saying this entire operation is about market consolidation? Partially. Also about sending a message. Also about proving a point. Humans are excellent multitaskers when there's profit involved. But the cost, the resources, the coordination required. Oh, it's expensive. The demolitions expert agreed cheerfully. Wildly expensive. We've probably spent more on this operation than we'll make back in the next 5 years. Completely irrational from a pure cost-benefit perspective. Then why? Kez pulled up a chair, sat backward on it, arms crossed over the backrest. Because humans don't do cost-benefit analysis the way you do. We factor in intangibles, reputation, precedent. The sheer satisfaction of proving we can do something impossible just because someone said we couldn't. That's insane. That's marketing. After this, every species in 6 systems will know. You don't hire humans to fight humans. You hire humans to fight your enemies, and you pay us extremely well for the privilege. It's a protection racket with extra steps and better PR. The general looked at each human in turn, trying to find a weakness, an angle. You've committed acts of sabotage, espionage, and infiltration against a military vessel of the Rexian Empire. Even if you escape, the consequences will be what, exactly? Kez asked. You going to report that a dozen humans walked onto your flagship and took it apart from the inside? That your vaunted security systems got fooled by some skin cells and paperwork? That your entire operational security is apparently held together with good intentions and hope? The silence was answer enough. Didn't think so, Kez continued. Because here's the beautiful part, General. You can't admit this happened without admitting you're incompetent. And the Vrexian Empire really hates incompetence, don't they? I've read your military doctrine. Very thorough, very unforgiving. The general's voice was barely a whisper. What do you want? Now we're getting somewhere. Kez stood, started pacing. First, you're going to release a formal apology, broadcast across 6 systems, acknowledging that the Vrexian Empire made an error in judgment regarding human contractors. That would undermine our authority. Your authority is already undermined. We're just deciding whether it gets undermined publicly with some dignity or privately when your superiors find out you lost control of your own ship. The medical officer pulled out a prepared statement. We've written it for you. Very diplomatic. Basically says you respect human autonomy and won't interfere in human affairs without proper diplomatic channels. Standard non-aggression language with fancy words. Second, Kez said, you're going to pay reparations. Not to Earth's government. They just wasted on infrastructure or education or something boring. No, you're paying the families of everyone who died on that transport ship, including my friend. How much? The scarred human named a figure that made the general's eyes widen. That's more than the ship was worth. Yep, consider it a penalty for poor targeting. Also interest, emotional damages, processing fees. We itemized everything. Third, Kez continued, you're going to ensure that every Vrexian intelligence officer gets updated training materials. Specifically about Earth, about what we're actually capable of when properly motivated. We've prepared a comprehensive curriculum. Very educational. You want us to train our own operatives about your capabilities? We want you to train your operatives not to mess with us. Big difference. Think of it as preventive maintenance for diplomatic relations. The general was quiet for a long moment. And if I refuse? Kez's smile could have lit the darkened room. Then we move to Plan B. Which is? Plan B is where we stop being nice. The demolitions expert helpfully added, Plan B involves explaining to your superiors how you lost a dreadnought-class vessel to a maintenance crew. In detail, with documentation and video evidence. We've been recording everything. You're blackmailing me. We're offering you a choice, Kez corrected. Option A. You do what we ask, everyone walks away intact, and you get to keep your career and possibly your life. Option B. We release everything. Your empire tears itself apart trying to assign blame, and we sell the footage to entertainment networks as a comedy special. Humans love watching authority figures fail spectacularly. The general's carapace had cycled through so many colors it was starting to repeat. This is dishonorable. Honor's a luxury for people who can afford it, Kez said. We're just trying to make a living. And you made it personal. One ship, one individual. You've built an entire conspiracy around one individual's death. Yeah, Kez said softly. We do that. It's kind of our thing. You kill one of us, we take it as a declaration of intent. We respond proportionally, which, for humans, means disproportionately by everyone else's standards. The medical officer checked their chronometer. General, you've got about 15 minutes before your bridge crew notices the anomalies we've introduced into their sensor logs. After that, they'll start asking questions you really don't want to answer. 14 minutes, the scarred human corrected. There's a particularly astute ensign on duty. She's sharp. The general looked at Kez. Really looked at her, like seeing her for the first time. What are you? Me, specifically? I'm someone who lost a friend and decided that wasn't acceptable. But humans in general? Kez tilted her head. We're the species that turned spite into a survival strategy. We're the ones who looked at an entire galaxy of beings stronger, faster, smarter than us, and said, yeah, but can you outstubborn us? We're persistence hunters who learned to hunt concepts instead of prey. You're monsters. Maybe. But we're your monsters now. You created this situation when you decided Earth was just another resource to exploit. When you assumed we'd roll over because we're biologically inferior. When you forgot the most important rule about dealing with humans. What rule? Kez leaned in close, voice dropping to something almost gentle. Never, ever make us cooperate. Because when humans stop fighting each other and start working together toward a common goal, we become the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Focused. The general's shoulders sagged, or whatever the Rexian equivalent was. Defeat, clear as day. The apology, the general said finally. The reparations. The training materials. You'll leave after that? Scout's honor, Kez said, holding up 3 fingers in a gesture the general definitely didn't understand. What guarantee do I have that you'll honor this agreement? None whatsoever. But consider our track record. We could have just killed you. Could have destroyed this ship. Could have done a lot of things. But we didn't. We orchestrated this entire performance because we wanted you to understand something. Understand what? Kez smiled. Not the sharp, dangerous smile from before. Something else. Something almost sad. That humans keep our word when we give it. We're vengeful, petty, stubborn, and occasionally insane. But we're also loyal, honorable in our own way. And if you treat us with respect, we'll return it. But if you try to use us, manipulate us, treat us as expendable. She gestured at the room full of humans who'd infiltrated a military dreadnought just to prove a point. Then we'll show you exactly how creative humans can be with consequences. The general stood slowly. I'll make the broadcast. Louder, Kez reminded them. Remember? Say it louder. Make sure everyone hears what happens when you mess with Earthborn. The general walked to the communications panel, activated it, and began the most humiliating message they'd ever delivered. Kez watched, satisfied. Behind her, one of the humans whispered, "Think they learned their lesson?" "For now," Kez said. "But humans are great teachers. We can always offer remedial courses." The broadcast took 7 minutes. Kez timed it, watching the general's carapace darken with each word of the prepared statement. The apology wound through diplomatic language like a snake through tall grass, acknowledging errors in operational protocol, expressing regret for inadvertent casualties, pledging revised engagement parameters with human-affiliated entities, nothing that admitted guilt outright, everything that screamed it anyway. When the general finished, the room held its breath. Then, from somewhere deep in the ship's infrastructure, a low hum began. Not quite mechanical. Not quite organic. The sound of a vessel realizing it had been compromised in ways its architects never imagined. "That wasn't so hard," the scarred demolitions expert said, powering down her tablet. See? Cooperation. The general's mandibles twitched. You have what you wanted. Leave. Almost, Kez said. She gestured to the medical officer, who pulled out a small injector. One more thing. Quality assurance. What is that? Insurance, harmless nanite trackers. We inject them, they dissolve in 72 hours, but during that time we'll know exactly where you are and what you're saying, just in case you get creative with damage control after we're gone. You said, I said we'd leave. I didn't say we'd trust you. Kez took the injector, examined it like she was considering where to place it. Hold still. This'll sting. The general didn't move, didn't resist, just stood there while Kez administered the injection with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Which, fair enough, she had. 17 times in the last month alone. There we go. All done. Now, before we depart, let's review. Kez counted on her fingers. Apology broadcast? Check. Reparations transfer coordinates provided? Check. Training materials uploaded to your central database? Check. General successfully convinced that humans are more trouble than we're worth? Definite check. How did you know? The general asked suddenly. That I would comply? Kez considered the question. Because you're smart. Smarter than your tribunal, definitely. You understand cost-benefit in ways they don't. And you saw the writing on the wall the moment we revealed ourselves. That's not an answer. Fine. You want the real answer. We didn't know. This whole thing was a gamble. 50-50 chance you'd call our bluff, shoot us all, and deal with the consequences. But humans are really, really good at reading people. And you, General? Kez smiled. You're a survivor. Survivors make deals. The demolitions expert checked her wrist display. Extraction windows open. We should move. The humans filed toward the door with the relaxed confidence of people leaving a successful business meeting. No rush, no panic, just professionals concluding professional business. Kez paused at the threshold, looked back. One more thing, General. Purely educational. What? You asked earlier what we are, what humans actually are beneath all the biology and the bravado. You want to know the real secret? The general said nothing, but their eyes tracked Kez with the focus of someone memorizing every detail. We're storytellers, Kez said. That's it. That's the whole thing. We tell stories about ourselves until we believe them, and then we make them true through sheer bloody-minded determination. We decided we were persistence hunters, so we chased prey across continents. We decided we were too smart to stay on one planet, so we built ships and left. We decided that loyalty to our dead mattered more than survival. So we built monuments and religions and entire civilizations around honoring people who couldn't possibly benefit from it. She leaned against the doorframe, casual. And when you killed my friend, you gave me a new story to tell. About how one human decided that an entire empire needed to learn some manners. About how that human convinced a bunch of criminals and outcasts and general troublemakers to cooperate long enough to infiltrate your flagship and make you apologize to the galaxy. A story, the general repeated, voice flat. The best kind. One with a lesson. See, you studied our biology and saw weakness. You should have studied our narratives and seen inevitability. Humans don't give up on our stories. We'll chase them across continents, across centuries, across star systems if we have to. We'll sacrifice everything to make the ending work out right. That's insanity. That's humanity. We're the species that looked at the heat death of the universe and said, sure, but that's a problem for future generations. We're the ones who saw evolution as a challenge to overcome, not a limit to accept. We're persistence hunters who learned to hunt meaning itself. Kez straightened. So here's your final lesson, General. Free of charge. When you're writing your report, and you will write a report, they'll demand one. Remember this. Humans are dangerous not because we're strong or fast or particularly clever. We're dangerous because we can convince ourselves that impossible things are merely difficult, and difficult things are just Tuesday. I'll remember. Good. Because next time someone suggests hiring humans for something, you'll have a great story to tell them about why that's a terrible idea. Kez grinned. Unless, of course, you're hiring us to work for you. In which case, our rates just went up. Supply and demand. She left. The corridor outside was chaos. Organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Humans in various disguises were systematically removing evidence of their presence, wiping databases, extracting hardware, leaving the ship's systems functional but thoroughly scrubbed, like they'd never been there at all, except everyone would know they had been. That was the point. The scarred demolitions expert fell into step beside Kez. Think they'll actually learn? Some of them, the smart ones, the rest? Kez shrugged. The rest will need more expensive lessons. Job security. Exactly. They reached the cargo bay where an unmarked transport waited, engines already warming. Inside, 24 more humans were securing equipment, running final checks, preparing for departure. The coordination was seamless, practiced, the kind of efficiency that came from people who'd worked together despite usually trying to kill each other. Kez paused before boarding, looked back at the Vrexian dreadnought stretching away into the distance. Massive, powerful, completely humiliated by some maintenance workers and forged paperwork. You know, what the best part is, she said to no one in particular. What's that? Someone asked from inside the transport. They'll never be sure we actually left. Every system glitch, every unexplained anomaly, every maintenance worker who looks slightly wrong. They'll wonder if it's us, if we're still here, still watching. Kez laughed. We've turned their flagship into a haunted house. Psychological warfare. Psychological storytelling, Kez corrected. We're giving them a narrative they'll never escape. The story of the Earthborn, who infiltrated their most secure vessel and made them beg for mercy. She boarded the transport, settled into a jump seat, and watched through the viewport as they detached from the dreadnought. The massive vessel hung in space like a monument to expensive engineering and shattered pride. Message incoming, someone called from the cockpit. It's the reparations transfer. Full amount. They actually paid. Cheers erupted through the transport. Humans high-fiving, laughing, already planning how to divide the windfall among the families who'd lost people to Vrexian aggression. Kez just smiled. The transport accelerated, putting distance between them and their triumph. But the story would travel faster. Already spreading through networks, channels, whispers between ships. The tale of how humans responded when someone made the mistake of treating them as expendable. Where to next? The pilot asked. Kez pulled out her tablet, scrolled through messages. Dozens of them. Offers, contracts, opportunities from people who'd heard rumors about what happened and wanted to hire the Earthborn who'd pulled it off. Let's see, Kez mused. We've got the Kellic Syndicate offering triple rates for security consultation. The Thracian Mining Collective wants advice on human psychology. Oh, and there's a very generous proposal from the Cooperative Council requesting we not do to them what we did to the Rexians. That last one's basically free money. Right? I love getting paid for doing nothing. Kez marked several messages for follow-up. But first, we're making a stop. Where? Station Tarsus 9. There's a memorial garden there for people lost in transport incidents. My friend's name is on it. The transport went quiet. Understanding rippled through the crew. "We're going to tell her the story," Kez said softly. "About how we made an empire apologize, about how we turned her death into a legend, about how humans don't forget, don't forgive, and definitely don't let things go." "She'd appreciate that," someone said. "Yeah, she would." The stars slipped past the viewport, ancient light from distant suns carrying their own stories across the void. Somewhere out there, the Vrexian Empire was learning what it meant to give humans a reason. Somewhere else, other species were recalculating their risk assessments about Earth. And somewhere in between, a transport full of criminals and outcasts who'd briefly stopped competing to prove a point were already planning their next impossible thing. Because that's what humans did. They told stories. They believed them. They made them true. Kez leaned back in her seat, closed her eyes, and smiled. The galaxy was full of species that had evolved for strength, for speed, for intelligence. But only one had evolved for spite, creativity, and the absolute conviction that any problem could be solved with sufficient determination and flexible ethics. Only one species looked at the word impossible and heard expensive. Only one species turned grudges into art, revenge into philosophy, and petty grievances into galaxy-spanning operations that redefined diplomatic relations. The general had asked what humans were. Kez had answered honestly, storytellers. But the better answer, the one she'd keep to herself, was simpler. They were the punchline. The joke the universe played on itself when it created a species that refused to accept the rules of the game, rewrote them to suit themselves, and then convinced everyone else it had always been that way. The joke that looked at an empire of warriors and bureaucrats and said, "We can take them with paperwork and patience." The joke that won. And the beautiful thing about being the punchline, Kez thought as the transport jumped to FTL, was that the joke never got old. There was always someone new who needed to hear it. Always someone who'd underestimate humans, assume we were simple or weak or manageable. Always someone who needed to learn that the most dangerous words in the galaxy weren't a threat or a warning. They were 3 simple syllables, spoken with a smile. "We're Earthborn." And now, thanks to a very public apology broadcast across 6 systems, everyone knew exactly what that meant. The transport streaked through space, carrying its cargo of satisfied humans toward the next story, the next impossible thing, the next chance to remind the galaxy that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't our strength or our intelligence. It was our absolute refusal to accept that anything at all, was truly impossible. Just difficult. And difficult, as any human could tell you, was just Tuesday.